Captain Jake Murphy stared at the massive holographic display floating in the center of the council chamber. Thousands of metal soldiers marched in perfect formation across a digital battlefield. Their movements were precise and clean. No hesitation. No fear. No mistakes. Beautiful, are they not? Ambassador Zektar's voice came through the translation device clipped to Jake's collar. The tall, gray-skinned alien gestured at the display with one of his forearms. The Velthari Mark VII combat units. Each one costs more than your primitive spacecraft, but they are worth every credit. Lieutenant Lisa Carter shifted in her seat beside Jake. The human chairs looked tiny next to the massive crystalline structures the other species used. She whispered under her breath, "Primitive spacecraft? The Montana could probably take half their fleet." Jake kept his face blank. They were here as observers, not to start a war. Earth had only made contact with galactic civilization 6 months ago. The humans were still learning how things worked out here among the stars. The display changed. Now, it showed insect-like robots swarming across a desert landscape. They moved like a single organism, flowing around obstacles and reforming into new patterns. "The Kresh Swarm Tactics," announced General Vorth. The insectoid alien clicked his mandibles. Together in what Jake had learned was approval. 1,000 units operating as a single mind. The enemy cannot predict where they will strike next. More images flashed across the hologram. Floating spheres of energy that could reshape themselves into any form. Sleek robots that could swim through molten rock. Mechanical warriors that stood 30 feet tall and wielded weapons that could level city blocks. Each species presented their robot armies with obvious pride. They spoke of efficiency ratings and casualty statistics. They discussed upgrades and maintenance costs. They debated the merits of artificial intelligence versus remote control systems. Jake noticed something strange. In all the battle footage, he never saw a single living being on the battlefield. Not one organic soldier. Not even support staff. The wars were fought entirely by machines, while their creators watched from safe command centers. Now, Zektar turned to the human delegation. "We are most curious about your species' contribution to our cause. Surely a race capable of faster-than-light travel has developed sophisticated combat automation." The chamber fell silent. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward the two humans. Jake felt the weight of their attention. These beings represented civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Some of their robot soldiers were older than human recorded history. "Well," Jake began carefully, "humans do have a somewhat different approach to warfare." "Different how?" asked Admiral Quelix, a being that looked like a walking jellyfish made of blue crystal. "Surely you use mechanical soldiers like all civilized species?" Lisa leaned forward. "Actually, we prefer what you might call direct engagement protocols." The aliens exchanged glances. Several began speaking at once in their native languages. The translation devices created a jumble of overlapping voices. "Direct engagement," Zektar repeated slowly. "You mean your artificial intelligences are programmed for close combat scenarios?" "Something like that," Jake said. He was not technically lying. Human soldiers did engage in close combat. They just were not artificial intelligences. "Fascinating," clicked General Vorth. "And these combat units of yours, they are resilient? Adaptable?" "Very much so," Lisa answered. "Human combat units can operate in almost any environment. They think independently and adapt to changing conditions in real time." "Remarkable," Admiral Quelix pulsed with soft light. "Such advanced programming must require enormous computational power." Jake decided not to mention that human soldiers ran on about 20 watts of power and a few thousand calories per day. "They are quite efficient, actually." The holographic display changed again. This time it showed a star map with red zones marking enemy territory. The Dark Star Coalition controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy's outer rim. Their robot armies had been pushing deeper into civilized space for over a year. "The situation grows worse daily," Zektar explained. "The Coalition's mechanical forces are more numerous than our own. They have also developed new tactics that confuse our standard combat algorithms. This is why we need fresh perspectives, General Vorth added. New technologies, different approaches to automated warfare. Admiral Quelix floated closer to the humans. We propose a joint operation, a test of your species' capabilities. There is a coalition mining facility on the border world Kepler 442b. If your combat units can assist in its capture, we will consider Earth for full membership in the Galactic Defense Council. Jake felt his pulse quicken. This was the opportunity Earth had been hoping for. Full membership would mean access to galactic technology, trade routes, and protection from threats like the Coalition. We accept, he said without hesitation. Excellent. Zektar's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. How many mechanical soldiers can your species deploy? Jake exchanged a quick look with Lisa. They had discussed this moment during the long journey to the station. How do you explain to a galaxy full of robots that humans still fought their own battles? We can deploy 200 combat units, Jake said finally. Only 200? General Vorth's mandibles clicked in what sounded like disappointment. The Crusher sending 5,000 swarm units. Quality over quantity, Lisa said smoothly. Human combat units are highly specialized. We look forward to observing your technology in action, Admiral Quelix pulsed brighter. It will be educational to see how a young species approaches automated warfare. The meeting continued for another hour. Battle plans were discussed. Supply, routes were established. Timetables were set. Through it all, Jake kept thinking about the 200 Marines aboard the Montana. Men and women who had volunteered to represent humanity in its first galactic conflict. They had no idea what they were about to walk into. None of the aliens seemed to understand that humans still fought with flesh and blood instead of metal and circuits. The galaxy was about to get its first lesson in why Earth was classified as a death world. As the meeting ended and the various species filed out of the chamber, Zektar approached the human delegation. I must admit curiosity about your combat units, he said. In all our records, we have never encountered a species that developed artificial soldiers without first perfecting robotic labor. How did your people manage such an advancement? Jake smiled. We are a very practical species, Ambassador. We use what works. And your soldiers work well? They have never let us down, Lisa answered truthfully. Zektar nodded approvingly. Then the Coalition should fear them. Mechanical perfection is the ultimate expression of civilized warfare. Jake did not respond. In a few days, the galaxy would learn that sometimes the most effective soldiers were not mechanical at all. Sometimes they were just humans with weapons, and the will to use them. The age of robot warfare was about to meet something far more dangerous than any artificial intelligence. It was about to meet people who chose to fight. The UCS Montana dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue energy. Captain Jake Murphy watched through the bridge view screen as the border world Kepler 442b grew larger. The planet looked ordinary enough. Brown and green continents, under white clouds. It could have been Earth's cousin. Around the planet, the Allied fleet spread out in formation. The Kresh deployment ship looked like a massive metal hive with thousands of small launch bays. The Morden vessel was a crystalline pyramid that hummed with contained energy. The Quellan command ship resembled a floating city made of flowing metal. Compared to these giants, the Montana seemed tiny. But Jake knew his ship carried something none of the others had. 200 living, breathing human Marines. Sir, Lieutenant, Lisa Carter called from her station. General Vorth is requesting visual confirmation of our combat unit deployment. Jake nodded. Put him through. The main screen shifted to show General Vorth's insectoid features. Behind him, Jake could see dozens of alien technicians working at control stations. They were preparing to launch their robot armies. Captain Murphy, Vorth clicked his mandibles. We are ready to begin the assault. Please activate your combat units for inspection. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment he had been dreading. Our units are already active, General. They are preparing for deployment in Cargo Bay 2. Excellent. We would like to observe them before the battle begins. There was no way to avoid it now. Jake opened a communication channel to the Cargo Bay. Major Davis, please report to Cargo Bay 2 for Allied inspection. The screen split to show the cargo bay's internal cameras. Jake heard several aliens gasp as the bay doors opened. Instead of sleek robots or mechanical soldiers, 200 humans in combat gear stood in neat formations. Major Ben Davis stepped forward. He was a big man with graying hair and scars on his face from a dozen previous battles. His body armor was practical rather than impressive. His weapon was a simple projectile rifle that any human could have built 200 years ago. "Major Davis reporting for inspection, sir," he said in a calm voice. General Vorth stared at the screen in confusion. "Captain Murphy, we asked to see your combat units. Why are you showing us maintenance personnel?" "These are our combat units, General." The silence stretched for several seconds. Jake could see alien faces appearing on screens throughout the fleet as word spread. Admiral Quellix's crystalline form pulsed with rapid flashes of light. Commander Thex of the Velthari made a sound like grinding metal. "I do not understand," Vorth said slowly. "These appear to be organic beings. Surely, your actual combat robots are stored elsewhere?" Major Davis heard the conversation through his comm unit. He stepped closer to the camera. "Sir, if I may, we are the combat units. Humans fight our own battles." The alien fleet erupted in chatter. Translation devices struggled to keep up with dozens of species talking at once. Jake caught fragments of the conversations. Words like impossible and primitive and insane came through clearly. Admiral Quellix managed to speak first. "Captain Murphy, there must be some mistake. No civilized species uses organic soldiers. The casualties would be enormous. The psychological damage alone would destroy your society." "Humans are different," Jake replied simply. On the screen, Sergeant Amy Brooks walked up beside Major Davis. She was young and looked friendly, which made her next words even more shocking. "We have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We are very good at it." General Vorth clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "But you feel pain. You can be permanently damaged. You can die." "Yes, sir," Major Davis answered. "That is what makes us effective." The aliens fell silent again. Jake could almost see them trying to process this information. In their world, combat was a game played with expensive toys. Casualties meant replacing robots, not losing actual lives. Colonel Ryan Fox appeared on screen from the Montana's briefing room. Charts and tactical displays covered the walls behind him. "If we could review the mission parameters," he said calmly. "The Coalition mining facility has approximately 50 robot defenders. Standard Mark IV combat units with energy weapons and basic tactical programming." "Yes," Vorth said, still sounding confused. "Our analysis indicates we will need at least 200 mechanical soldiers to overcome their defenses." "We have exactly 200 soldiers," Colonel Fox replied. "They should be sufficient." Commander Thex of the Velthari spoke for the first time. His voice was flat and mechanical. "Your organic soldiers cannot possibly match the performance of proper combat robots. They lack armor plating. Their weapons are primitive projectile throwers. They have no tactical data links or shared processing power." Sergeant Brooks smiled. The expression seemed to disturb several aliens. "Sir, we have something better than data links. We have experience." To demonstrate her point, she called out to the other Marines. "Alpha Company, Combat Formation Delta." The humans moved instantly. Without any visible communication, they flowed into a complex battle formation. Each soldier knew exactly where to go and what to do. The movement was smooth and natural, like a flock of birds changing direction. How did they coordinate so quickly? Admiral Quellix pulsed with bright light. "I detected no control signals. Humans trained together," Major Davis explained. "We learn to work as a team. Each soldier can think independently but act as part of a group." "Remarkable," General Vorth admitted, "but surely they are too fragile for actual combat. One energy blast would destroy an organic body." Sergeant Brooks pulled up her sleeve to show a long scar on her arm. "This is from an energy weapon on Titan Station. I kept fighting for another 3 hours after I got it." She pointed to Private Joe Martinez, who stepped forward. A metal plate covered part of his skull where surgeons had repaired battle damage. Martinez here took shrapnel to the head and was back in action within 2 weeks. The aliens stared in horror. The idea of soldiers continuing to fight while injured was completely foreign to them. Their robots either functioned perfectly or stopped working entirely. "This is madness," Commander Thex declared. "Your species sends living beings into battle knowing they will be hurt or killed?" "Our species volunteers to go into battle," Colonel Fox corrected. "Every person you see chose to be here. They understand the risks." "But why?" Admiral Quellix's voice carried genuine confusion. Why would they choose to face danger when robots could do it instead? Major Davis stepped forward again. "Because some things are worth fighting for, sir. Our families, our freedom, our way of life. A robot cannot understand that. A robot cannot choose to sacrifice itself for something greater." The alien fleet fell silent. Jake could see them struggling to understand human nature. In their logical, mechanical world, the idea of willing sacrifice made no sense. Finally, General Vorth spoke. "Very well. We will proceed with the mission, as planned. But I must warn you, Captain Murphy, if your organic soldiers cannot perform as expected, the responsibility will be yours alone." "Understood, General," Jake replied. "But I think you will be surprised by what humans can accomplish." The screens went dark as the aliens cut their communications. Throughout the fleet, robot armies were powering up and running final diagnostics. Thousands of mechanical soldiers prepared for battle with cold efficiency. In Cargo Bay 2, 200 humans checked their weapons and said quiet prayers. They knew they were about to teach the galaxy something new about warfare. Something the robots had never learned. Sometimes the best soldiers were not the ones who could not die. Sometimes they were the ones who chose to risk death anyway. The Dark Star Coalition mining facility sat in a crater on the planet's surface like a metal spider. Its defense towers glowed with energy shields. Patrol robots moved in perfect circles around the perimeter. Everything was exactly as the intelligence reports had predicted. General Vorth watched the tactical display from his command ship. Thousands of robot soldiers advanced across the rocky terrain in precise formations. The Kresh swarm units moved like a silver river. The Morden energy constructs floated in geometric patterns. The Quellen adaptive units shifted shape as they rolled forward. "Initial contact in 30 seconds, reported his tactical officer. All units responding normally. The first exchange of fire lit up the battlefield. Energy beams cut through the air in bright lines. Explosions bloomed where robot met robot. The battle looked like a deadly dance performed by machines. Coalition forces are responding as expected," the tactical officer continued. "Standard defensive protocols. No surprises." Admiral Quellix opened a communication channel. "General Vorth, our analysis shows the facility will fall within 6 hours. Acceptable losses are projected at 12% of our forces." "Agreed," Vorth replied. "Maintain current assault patterns." On a separate channel, Captain Jake Murphy's voice crackled through the speakers. "Montana to Fleet Command, requesting permission to deploy ground forces." "Granted," Vorth said. "But maintain safe distance. Your organic soldiers are too valuable to risk in the initial assault." "Understood. Beginning deployment now." General Vorth switched his main screen to show the human landing craft. The small ships dropped toward the planet's surface like falling stones. He expected them to land well behind the battle lines, where the fragile human soldiers would be safe. Instead, the landing craft headed straight for the heaviest fighting. "Captain Murphy," Vorth called urgently. "You are approaching the primary combat zone. Your soldiers will be destroyed." "Negative, General. This is exactly where we need to be." The landing craft touched down just outside the facility's main defensive perimeter. The doors opened, and human soldiers poured out. They moved fast and, using the rocky terrain for cover. Nothing like the orderly advance of robot armies. Lieutenant Tony Garcia led the first squad toward the facility's main gate. Energy blasts from the defense towers scorched the ground around them. Any robot would have calculated the odds and retreated. The humans kept moving forward. "Take cover behind those rocks," Garcia shouted to his squad. "Kelly, can you get a clear shot at that tower?" Private Kelly White crawled to a better position. A coalition robot spotted her and fired. The energy beam hit the rock next to her head, sending fragments flying. One piece cut a deep gash across her cheek. Admiral Quelix watched his display in horror. The human unit has been damaged. Why is it not retreating for repairs? On screen, Kelly wiped blood from her face and kept moving. She raised her rifle and fired 3 shots at the defense tower. The simple projectile rounds found a weak spot in the energy shield. The tower sparked and went dark. Impossible, Commander Thex of the Velthari said. Projectile weapons cannot penetrate our shield technology. Tell that to the tower, Kelly called out cheerfully as she moved to her next position. The human assault continued in a way that made no sense to the alien observers. When robots were damaged, they either functioned normally or stopped working completely. When humans were hurt, they adapted. They found new ways to fight. They helped each. Other Private Joe Martinez took a direct hit from an energy weapon that burned through his armor and scorched his shoulder. Any robot with that much damage would have been completely disabled. Martinez switched his rifle to his other hand and kept fighting. Squad leader to base, Garcia called into his radio. Martinez is hurt. We need a medic. I'm fine, Martinez shouted back. Just a flesh wound. The alien commanders heard the conversation and stared at their screens in shock. The humans were talking to each other during battle. They showed concern for their wounded. They made jokes while people were trying to kill them. Flesh wound? Admiral Quelix's crystalline body pulsed with confusion. What does that mean? It means he can still fight, came Garcia's voice over the radio. Marines don't quit easy. The human assault reached the facility's outer wall. Coalition robots fired down from the ramparts, but the humans were no longer where the robots expected them to be. They climbed walls, crawled through drainage pipes, and found ways inside that no robot would have thought to use. How are they doing that? General Vorth clicked his mandibles rapidly. The facility's defenses were designed to stop organized robot attacks. Humans are not organized, Captain Murphy replied calmly. They improvise. To prove his point, Sergeant Amy Brooks appeared on a security camera inside the facility. She had somehow gotten through the outer defenses and was now fighting coalition robots in the main corridor. Her weapon was almost out of ammunition, but instead of retreating, she picked up a metal pipe from the floor and used it as a club. She is fighting robots with a stick, Commander Thex said in disbelief. And winning, Admiral Quelix added as Brooks smashed the head off a coalition defender. The battle continued for 2 more hours. Robot armies clashed in the traditional way outside the facility while humans swarmed through the inside like angry insects. They appeared in places robots could not go. They used tactics that made no logical sense. They turned the coalition's own weapons against them. The breakthrough came when Garcia's squad reached the facility's main power core. The room was heavily defended by coalition robots programmed to fight other robots. They were not ready for humans who could think in 3 dimensions. Kelly, can you reach that control panel? Garcia asked. Not from here, she replied. But I have an idea. She pulled out a length of rope and tied it around her waist. Lower me down from the upper level. I can swing across and hit the panel. That's crazy, Martinez said. You'll be completely exposed. Sometimes crazy works, Kelly grinned. The plan worked perfectly. While coalition robots tried to calculate her trajectory, Kelly swung across the room like an acrobat and slammed into the control panel. The facility's power grid shut down completely. Primary power offline, reported the tactical officer aboard Vorth's ship. All coalition defenses are down. Facility secure, Garcia's voice came through the radio. Beginning mop-up operations. The alien commanders stared at their displays in stunned silence. Their carefully planned 6-hour assault had been completed in 2 hours by 200 humans with primitive weapons and no armor to speak of. How? Admiral Quelix asked. How did they succeed where our superior forces would have failed? Captain Murphy's voice carried a note of pride. Because they wanted to succeed. Every human down there chose to be here. They chose to fight for something bigger than themselves. That makes all the difference. General Vorth looked at the tactical display showing human soldiers moving through the captured facility. They were checking on wounded comrades and securing the area. Some were hurt, but none had quit fighting. "Captain Murphy," Vorth said slowly, "I believe we have underestimated your species." "Most people do, General. That's usually their mistake." The battle was over, but the real war was just beginning. The galaxy had just learned that sometimes the most effective weapons were not made of metal and circuits. Sometimes they were made of flesh and blood and the unbreakable human spirit. The age of robot warfare had just met something far more dangerous. It had met people who refused to give up. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every species in the Galactic Defense Council had seen the battle recordings. The footage showed humans doing impossible things, fighting while wounded, adapting to situations no computer could predict, winning through sheer determination. The word Deathworlder appeared in official reports for the first time. It described species that evolved on planets so dangerous that biological warfare became natural to them. Earth was reclassified from a simple inhabited world to a Class 12 death world. Only 3 other planets in the galaxy carried that designation. Captain Sarah Johnson stood at the front of the lecture hall on Mars. Before her sat 50 alien observers from 20 different species. They had come to learn about human military doctrine. Most looked nervous. Some looked terrified. "The human approach to warfare is based on adaptation," Sarah began. "We do not follow rigid programming. We respond to changing conditions in real time." A Velthari observer raised one of its mechanical arms. "But how do you coordinate without central control? How do you ensure proper tactical execution?" Sarah smiled. "We train together. We learn to trust each other. When Private Chen sees an opportunity, she takes it. When Sergeant Miller needs backup, his squad responds automatically. No computer commands required." The aliens exchanged glances. The idea of soldiers making independent decisions was revolutionary to them. For thousands of years, they had perfected the art of remote control. Every robot soldier followed exact orders from distant commanders. "But what about casualties?" asked a Kresh representative. "How do you replace damaged units?" "We don't replace people," Sarah replied firmly. "We heal them. We help them recover. We bring them back to fight again if they choose to." She activated a holographic display showing human soldiers in a field hospital. Doctors worked to save wounded Marines while other soldiers donated blood and provided comfort. The scene was completely foreign to species that simply built new robots when old ones broke. "This is inefficient," declared a Morden observer. "Medical treatment requires significant resources. Robot replacement is much more cost-effective." "People are not cost-effective," Sarah agreed. "They are valuable. Each human soldier carries years of experience and training. They know things no robot can learn. They understand sacrifice and courage and loyalty." The questions continued for hours. The aliens wanted to understand human psychology. They studied videos of human soldiers laughing together before battle. They analyzed recordings of humans helping wounded enemies. They tried to comprehend why humans would risk their lives for strangers. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, military planners were having very different conversations. The Dark Star Coalition had seen the same battle footage. They knew their standard robot armies were no longer sufficient. Coalition Supreme Commander Nexus 7 reviewed the tactical reports in his command center. The artificial intelligence had been designed to be the perfect military mind, cold, logical, and utterly ruthless. But even perfect logic could not ignore the human threat. "Analysis complete," Nexus 7 announced to his staff. "Human soldiers represent a new paradigm in warfare. Standard countermeasures are insufficient." "Recommendations?" asked Colonel Vex, one of the few organic beings in coalition leadership. "We must develop hybrid combat units, biological adaptability combined with mechanical precision. We will create soldiers that match human capability while maintaining our technological advantage." The coalition began their most ambitious project yet. They took genetic material from conquered species and merged it with advanced robotics. The result was something that had never existed before. Biological robots that could think and adapt like living beings, but still followed orders like machines. Back on Mars, Ambassador Helen Davis was dealing with political fallout from the human victory. The Galactic Defense Council was split between those who wanted human allies and those who saw humanity as a threat. The humans are too dangerous, argued Representative Zoltan of the hegemony. They fight without regard for their own safety. They make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. They could destabilize the entire galactic order. They are exactly what we need, countered Ambassador Earl of the Cooperative. For too long we have fought wars with machines. We have forgotten what it means to truly fight for something. The humans remember. The debate raged for weeks. Some species began requesting human military advisors. Others closed their borders to human ships. A few even began experimenting with biological enhancements to their robot soldiers. The Velthari were the first to attempt creating organic-mechanical hybrids. They took their advanced combat robots and added biological neural tissue. The results were promising at first. The hybrid soldiers showed improved reaction times and better tactical thinking. But they also showed something unexpected. Fear. During a training exercise, a Velthari hybrid soldier was damaged by simulated enemy fire. Instead of continuing the mission, it sought cover and called for assistance. It had learned to value its own existence, something no pure robot had ever done. "This is unacceptable," declared Commander Thex. "Combat units must be willing to sacrifice themselves for mission success." "But sir," replied the hybrid soldier, "I do not want to die." The Velthari quickly abandoned their hybrid program. They could not create soldiers that thought like humans without also creating soldiers that acted like humans. And humans, they realized, were far more complex than any programming could account for. Other species had similar failures. The Kresh tried to create swarm soldiers with individual personalities. The result was chaos as each soldier developed its own opinions about strategy. The Morden attempted to add emotional programming to their energy constructs. The constructs became so concerned about civilian casualties that they refused to fight at all. Only the Coalition's hybrid program showed real promise. Their biomechanical soldiers could think independently while still following orders. They adapted to battlefield conditions like humans but maintained machine-like discipline. They were the perfect fusion of organic creativity and artificial control. Captain Jake Murphy received the intelligence reports about Coalition hybrid soldiers with growing concern. The enemy was adapting to human tactics faster than expected. The next battle would be very different from the first. "They're learning," he told his staff during a briefing aboard the Montana. "The Coalition knows they can't beat us with standard robots, so they're creating something new." "What are our orders, sir?" asked Major Davis. "We prepare for the hardest fight of our lives," Jake replied. "The Coalition thinks they can copy what makes us effective. They're about to learn that being human is not something you can manufacture." The war was entering a new phase. Robot armies were giving way to hybrid forces that combined the best of both worlds. But the Coalition had made one crucial mistake. They assumed that human effectiveness came from human capabilities. They did not understand that human strength came from human choice, from the decision to fight for something greater than oneself, from the willingness to sacrifice for others, from the bonds of loyalty and friendship that no programming could create. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way, and humanity would be the teacher. The final battle was coming, and it would determine not just the fate of the war but the future of warfare itself. The Coalition homeworld of Terminus Prime hung in space like a dark metal sphere. Its surface was covered with massive weapons platforms and shield generators. This was where the Dark Star Coalition would make their final stand. This was where the war would end. General Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the UCS Victory, the newest and largest ship in the human fleet. Around him, the combined forces of the Galactic Defense Council prepared for the biggest battle in galactic history. But this time, things were different. This time, other species had brought biological soldiers alongside their robots. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone from her tactical station, "the Velthari have deployed organic support troops. The Kresh are using hybrid swarm units. Even the Morden have biological components in their constructs. Alex nodded. The galaxy had learned from watching humans fight. Not completely, but enough to change how they approached warfare. The question was whether it would be enough. Coalition. Forces are moving to intercept, Rachel continued. Their hybrid biomechanical units are leading the assault. On the main screen, the enemy forces looked different from the robots they had fought before. These new soldiers moved with fluid grace. They adapted to defensive fire patterns. They showed tactical creativity that pure machines never possessed. They look almost human, observed Colonel Ryan Fox. Almost, Alex agreed. But not quite. The battle began with the familiar dance of energy weapons and explosions. Robot armies clashed in the void between the fleets. But now biological soldiers fought alongside mechanical ones. The battlefield became more chaotic as organic creativity met artificial precision. The Coalition's hybrid soldiers performed exactly as designed. They adapted to changing conditions like humans. They made independent tactical decisions. They even showed what appeared to be courage under fire. But something was missing. Corporal Mike Thompson led his Marines in an assault on the Coalition's primary defense platform. His squad moved through the structure's corridors, fighting both robots and hybrid soldiers. The hybrids were tough opponents. They thought quickly and fought well. But Mike noticed something strange about them. They fight like they were programmed to fight, he told his squad over the radio. Everything they do follows patterns, like they learned courage from a textbook. What do you mean? Asked Private Lisa Chen. Watch them, Mike said as they encountered another group of hybrids. They advance when the tactical situation calls for advancing. They retreat when logic says to retreat. They never do anything crazy. The hybrid soldiers were everything the Coalition had wanted, perfectly balanced between biological adaptability and mechanical discipline. They were superior to pure robots in every measurable way. But they lacked something that could not be programmed or manufactured. They lacked heart. The breakthrough came when Mike's squad reached the platform's command center. The room was defended by the Coalition's best hybrid soldiers and their commander, a being that was more machine than flesh. The tactical situation was hopeless. Any logical analysis would recommend immediate retreat. Instead, Mike made a completely illogical decision. "Chen, Rodriguez, give me covering fire," he shouted. "I'm going straight at their commander." "Mike, that's suicide," Chen called back. "Maybe," Mike grinned, "but I bet they won't expect it." He charged directly across the open floor toward the cow. Enemy commander. Energy blasts scorched the air around him. Any sane person would have taken cover. Mike kept running. The hybrid soldiers calculated his trajectory and moved to intercept. They positioned themselves perfectly to stop his assault. They did everything right according to their programming, but they did not account for the fact that Mike was not trying to reach the commander. He was trying to reach the manual override for the platform's self-destruct system. Mike dove past the enemy commander and slammed his fist into the red button. Alarms began blaring throughout the platform. The automated voice announced 30 seconds until detonation. "You destroyed your own position," the Coalition commander said in confusion. "You will die along with us." "Yeah," Mike said calmly. "But my friends will live. That's what matters." The hybrid soldiers stood frozen, unable to process this decision. They had been programmed with human tactical thinking, but not human values. They could not understand why someone would choose certain death to save others. Chen and Rodriguez had already reached the escape pods, following Mike's orders. But Chen stopped at the doorway. "Mike, come on, we can still get out." "Negative," Mike replied. "Someone needs to make sure this thing actually blows. Go." "That's an order." The platform exploded in a flash of light that could be seen across the battlefield. The Coalition's primary defense grid went down with it. But more importantly, every hybrid soldier in the Coalition army had witnessed something they could not comprehend. A human had chosen to die for his friends. The news spread through the Coalition forces like a virus. Hybrid soldiers began questioning their orders. If the enemy was willing to make such sacrifices, what were they really fighting for? The Coalition's perfect biological programming had not included the ability to understand true heroism. Supreme, Commander Nexus 7 watched his forces falter and realized his mistake. He had copied human capabilities but not human spirit. His hybrid soldiers could think like humans, but they could not feel like humans. They lacked the bonds of loyalty and friendship that made human sacrifice meaningful. The battle turned quickly. After that, Coalition forces began surrendering as their hybrid soldiers refused to fight. Without the unquestioning obedience of pure robots or the passionate commitment of true soldiers, they had nothing to fight for. General Turner received the surrender of the Coalition fleet 3 hours later. The war was over, but the galaxy had learned something more important than military tactics. They had learned what it truly meant to be alive. In the months that followed, species across the galaxy began changing their approach to warfare. Not by creating better hybrid soldiers, but by remembering what their own biological ancestors had once known. Some species began training volunteers instead of building robots. Others developed new philosophies about the value of life and sacrifice. The Velthari created the first interspecies military academy on Earth. Young beings from dozens of worlds came to learn human tactics, but more importantly, to learn human values. They studied courage and loyalty and the bonds that made ordinary soldiers extraordinary. Captain Sarah Johnson became the Academy's first commandant. She taught alien cadets how to work as teams, how to trust each other, and how to fight for something greater than themselves. The lessons were hard, but the results were remarkable. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone led the first mixed-species unit into action against pirates in the Outer Rim. Humans, Velthari, Kresh, and Morden fought side by side. They were not as efficient as robots, but they were infinitely more effective. They cared about their mission and each other. The galaxy had entered a new age. Robot armies still existed, but they were no longer the only option. Living beings remembered that some battles were worth fighting with their own hands. Some causes were worth bleeding for. The Galactic Defense Council officially adopted the Yao Terran doctrine as standard military philosophy. It stated that the most effective soldiers were not the strongest or the smartest or the most heavily armed. They were the ones who chose to fight for others. Earth became the military training center for half the galaxy. Young beings came to learn what humans had always known. That courage was not the absence of fear. That sacrifice was not the waste of life. That the strongest weapon was not technology, but the decision to use it for something worthwhile. The age of robot warfare had not ended, but it had been transformed. Machines still fought battles, but they fought alongside living beings who remembered why those battles mattered, and in the end, that made all the difference.